let's go, let's go. Welcome to the Allcast podcast. Today we want to dive into the real and raw stories of young entrepreneurs revolutionizing the scene to help you guys, our ambitious listeners, start building and pursuing your dreams.
Yeah, and today we're stoked to have Antyush, and I don't want to butcher your name, so is it Bollini?
Yeah, Antyush
Okay.
Bollini.
All right. Antyush is here with us. He's a student entrepreneur. Yeah, he's a student entrepreneur from Seattle, and he's a CEO at OneCourt. It's innovation with heart. What they're doing right now, helping
COO.
COO. Yeah, that's what I said. A COO.
Okay,
COO.
I heard CEO.
My bad. CEO of OneCourt. And he's also crushing it in his master's in technology innovation at the University of Washington. And what they're doing at OneCourt, I like to say it's innovation with heart. He's bringing live sports to the blind and low vision community. So some super cool stuff. And Antyush, you've been a mentor and a good friend of mine. And I'm just excited to share with our listeners how great of a person you are. So I'm super stoked to dive into it.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
First of all, kind of just dive into your journey. How did you get into entrepreneurship? And with the follow-up question, before we get into that, tell us what OneCourt is. Tell us what you're working on, what you've got scheming up.
Yeah, so OneCourt, as you mentioned, is making live sports more accessible to blind and low vision fans, and we're using haptics to do that. So we've designed with the community and created a device, like a tablet, that allows blind fans to put their hands on it and feel where the ball or where the players are on a field. So you can basically feel the action or feel the gameplay with your hands. Right now, lots of fans use the radio to follow the game, but the radio is often delayed and it doesn't tell you where the action is on the field. So essentially with touch, we're able to fill that gap in people's experience. But yeah, we're a pre-seed startup and working on it for the last 2 years now. Have seen a lot of traction picking up in the last, I'd say, few months that we're really excited about. But we're kind of in a stage of starting to launch pilots with professional sports teams and just get this in the hands of fans around the country.
So how did you really get yourself into this journey of entrepreneurship and putting yourself in the position that you are now? So what do you think your younger self would be thinking, hearing about you and your team bringing this vision to life?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually reflecting on this last night with my buddies, and we were talking about how goals change over time. And I think a couple of years ago when I started out on this, I said success for OneCourt, or for myself at least with OneCourt, would be if we had a product that people like to use and they were using it in a pilot like at a stadium. If we can make it that far, that would be success. And now we're almost at that point. We're on the cusp of it, right? So I think it's an interesting point. I think that my younger self just 2 years ago would have felt like, wow, I can't believe we actually made it this far. To answer your question about the entrepreneurial journey, I think that I was super involved in high school with a combination of tech related clubs, but also the business related ones like DECA and FBLA. And I started to do a lot of events like business plan and things like that. So coming into the University of Washington, I kind of had this foundational experience or awareness of what it's like to go through the process of coming up with an idea and marketing it and framing what a business model looks like and what your market size is like and what the product is and how you solve a problem. So I joined Lavin, which is an entrepreneurship program where I met you guys, which is awesome. And
Yeah,
that
you were my teacher. You were my TA for one of the classes when I first came in. I remember that.
Yeah. So, my freshman year, I was super involved with the program and I wanted to compete in the Dempsey startup competition. And that's when I had my first taste of entrepreneurship. And that was with Carson Nye. And we basically teamed up with a couple other students, Dominic and Sam. and we wanted to basically help uh, radiologists identify pneumonia more quickly in areas of the world where there's a really high number of patients and not as many doctors. So basically, speeding up the diagnosis process and improving access to healthcare. Um, and just going through the Dempsey process, what I realized was finally, like, unlike DECA, where everything was like make believe, right? We submitted a business plan to Dempsey and we're pitching it, and people are dead serious about what you're working on. And that's when I realized, like, at UW, working on a startup idea, it's real. Like, you have a chance to actually build something that can actually go from 0 to 1 and make an impact, and people are willing to help you. So throughout, I think, my UW experience, there's always been so many people who have been so inspiring of taking their ideas and actually trying to implement them and solve real world problems. Um, so essentially, my senior year, Jared pitched this idea of OneCourt, wanting to make live sports more accessible to blind and low vision fans at a Lavin all student meeting. And it was my senior year, and I said, I want to do Dempsey again, and this idea seems really cool. I want to help out. Um, so I'd say that's kind of how things kicked off. It was a long process. There was a lot of moments that kind of led up to it, and a lot of experiences that shaped my understanding of startups and entrepreneurship. But um, I think ultimately it's being surrounded by people who are ready and willing to take an idea and actually put it out there. You need that level of commitment.
Word. And so with that, how were you able to find what you were really wanted to specialize in? There's so many things in the startup world, and I feel like a lot of people kind of get numbed with like, oh, I have to be able to do everything. How were you able to really take in what your talents were, hone it in, and be the best COO for OneCourt? Like, how were you able to establish that this is what I'm gonna be good at?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think, for me, what I liked about entrepreneurship was that I didn't have to do just one thing. Um, like, even with my career, professional career wise, I was doing product management internships, right? And the reason I liked product management was because it was a great blend of business, design, and technology, right? And it's this idea of how do you take a product or an idea and, again, go from 0 to 1. The only difference with PM is that you're doing it in, like, maybe a bigger company, and you don't have to worry as much about the business use case. It's more about, like, building the product and working with the different teams to do that. So even at OneCourt, that was my initial role, uh, was product lead. And a lot of that time was spent on how do we validate that the problem exists? How do we validate that our idea for the solution actually might solve the problem? How do we get people using the device and giving us their feedback so we can iterate on it and then know if we're going to be building something that is going to be used? And how do we get the right people to participate in that activity, right? Do we have the engineering folks, both on software and hardware, who's doing the design stuff? So, and I think that a lot of my work currently is still kind of PMing at OneCourt, but what I did get exposure to was also the business side of things, like the sales, the go-to-market, the customer discovery, the partnerships, relationship building. And those are things I think that are a lot more soft skill based that I'd always been interested in. But um, I think that it's as we just started the process of kind of working on it, your different skills get exposed. So over time, I've transitioned to like a sales role almost, partnerships role, which is something that I didn't really, if you asked me 2 to 3 years ago, would I be doing sales and strategy? Uh, I would have said no.
Yeah, you
But
said, nah, I'm not
yeah,
trying to be a part of that.
but here I am. I'm doing a bit of both.
Yeah. I think there's beauty in kind of being able to be the jack of all trades when it comes to the startup world. One thing that I struggled with at least was trying, like I'm like more of like a indie hacker builder. Like I'm just building little side projects, little like I would call them meme startups, like just to ship something. But the thing that I love is being a part of every aspect of the product life cycle. And I feel like there's a cliche sometimes if you know you're not specialized. Like I'm not an engineer. I'm not just this person. But I think there's that's the beauty of the startup world is like if you're just like good at everything, you can set a foundation and you can take it and run with it, and later then figure out what you want to specialize in. And that's like I'm just giving like my 2 cents, having like I don't know. It's just there's just a beauty into the startup world where you can just kind of like just find out, like run it, take it, and just find out, over time.
Exactly. I mean, I think that even my grad program is essentially all about that. It's how do you go from an idea to a proof of concept, right? And I think that the most like dangerous people or the people who have like the best toolkits are the ones who can do that process on their own, right? Can you identify a problem? Can you test it with users, like understand their experience with it, build a couple of different early prototypes, just like, Figma mockups or like a little like device kind of thing that runs on like a Arduino or like Raspberry Pi, something super simple, right? You don't need to be a bit like an engineer or full-time designer to do those things. It's just about building out an initial concept and getting feedback on it. And if you can do that on your own, then you can validate if an idea has potential and then recruit a team or potentially get funding or win startup competitions at a university to basically move your idea forward. So what you're saying is like that's what you need, right? You just need those different skill sets um, to go from just an idea to like a concept.
And
If that
it
makes
creates a generation of new thoughts, right? When you dive yourself into actually building something, creating a proof of concept, seeing what customers think at the initial stage, you start like it's like your mind starts to think about this concept in a different way than if you just were to create like a business plan and try to present it to someone. But when you actually try to get something where people can touch, people can interact with, now you're seeing everything in a different lens, and like the game has changed, and now you could really see what it's like before you dive super deep into it. That's why like I always believe that you should just, no matter how shitty the product may be in your first go, I think everyone should just try to put something out there to get a proof of concept to see what this will interact with the world. And I love that just advice that you were giving overall.
I think it's also people can get a little scared when trying to launch that first thing, and like I think that's why me and Ak took our time trying to get this going. I want to ask you, Antyush, like what what's the first thing that you would recommend our listeners when trying to get validation from customers for something that they're trying to build? Because I feel like I really want to just like have everybody that I know like fill out like a Google form just so I can pick their brains. And it's hard to get a pool of people to like um to grasp their understanding of like what this is that I'm trying to build. What would you recommend that maybe you've learned with OneCourt or even like in your studies right now?
I think that a lot of people they get like one signal on like an idea and they just start building, right? And it's great that people feel motivated to start working on something because, you hear entrepreneurs and you ask them, like, oh, what's the biggest mistake someone can make who wants to get into entrepreneurship? I was like, you know, you don't start. That's the biggest mistake. But to go like one step after that, it's people starting on the work, but starting on the wrong work. It's people starting on development or building a solution. And they put all of this time and effort into something that ultimately no one ends up using because they never validated that the problem actually exists or that the solution they're building solves that problem that they're actually thinking of kind of working on. So I would say it's you hear some ideas, you come up with a problem that maybe exists. And instead of immediately jumping to, oh, I can build an app to like fix that, it's okay, let me talk to more people. Let me get 100 survey responses or 200 responses or talk to 50 people about this and start to get an understanding of what is that problem space look like? What is this thing, this kind of area that I want to build in? And then come up with a couple different ideas for a solution, like multiple. Your first one's never going to be the right one. And then you put all of those ideas in front of people. You could do a Figma prototype, you can do a paper wireframe, you could like build a little box that has some like buttons on it, whatever it is that you're building, and you just see if people resonate with that, if they're interested in it, if they would use it. And then you take their feedback and you come back. It's a process, right? Of constant iteration and feedback from people. I think what happens is people get just an initial little bit of feedback from the community or from someone talking about a problem that they have, and they go off and build a whole solution. And it's only one data point, and it's not even fully fleshed out, right? So that's kind of my experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say your problem space is like very niche, like very like, you wouldn't think like a typical student would come up with an idea like this. How were you guys able to validate your idea? What did you guys do to be able to ensure that this was something the blind community in the heart of like the like how were they able to identify that this was something they really wanted, and what did it take? What did it take for you guys to go out there to find these customers and stuff like that?
Yeah. So when you know, you hear about the idea and instantly you're like, why doesn't that already exist? Like, of course that makes sense. People who are blind and low vision, of course they need something that would make their experience to watch sports better, right? But do you actually know that?
Yeah.
Right? Either of you? Like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
you don't. Like, I say it, it makes sense.
It's kind of crazy because like I was thinking about it. I'm like, I can't remember a time, and maybe this is just me, but like I can't remember a time I've like interacted with like a blind individual, like actually talked to them. So I have no idea,
I
So
mean,
like
and coming from me being like ignorant about like this the community and stuff like that, I didn't even think about this was a problem that they were having. So that's why I was like so interested how you guys were able to like create a proof of concept of this and come up with this and really identify this problem because for us we didn't moving day to day, it's not something that's top of mind, sadly. But how were you guys able to really pinpoint that like this is like we need to make this and why isn't this already like not out there?
Mhm. So the original inspiration for the project came from a video of a blind man at a soccer match, and he was with a sighted woman who was watching the game and then moving his hands around on this game board. And when Jared saw that video, he realized that it was through touch that they were able to communicate what was happening on the field. So Jared, being an industrial design student, said, "What if we could make a device or use technology to scale that experience to every person with blindness or low vision who wants to watch sports?" So obviously that makes sense, right? It's coming from the community level. Like it's like, oh, of course, this population needs a solution that would improve their experience. But when I joined the team, the first things I asked were, okay, other than this video, how do we know that like people with blindness or low vision are even interested in sports? Do we know that? We didn't know that, and
really
that
big
was part of
picture,
our
zoom out
ignorance.
even more. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so it's like, what is the first core assumption, right? That was the first assumption, and a part of that, that learning process was going out and trying to figure out and just reading articles online and things like that. How do fans currently engage with sports? Do they enjoy sports? We found that yes, around 50% of people with blindness or low vision are sports fans, which is about the same rate as the rest of the population. That makes sense, right? Like everyone engages with sports through pop culture, through conversations, through like whatever it is, right? Like it's a part of our community. So that was the first thing. The second thing is is there a frustrating experience right now? Is there a problem to be solved? Or is their current experience with sports like going well? Like, are they happy with it? Then we found out, okay, yeah, there is frustrations with that experience. And a lot of it is specifically that with the radio, there's a delay. So sometimes 10 seconds, sometimes up to 2 minutes behind the live action. So fans in a stadium will hear everyone cheer and they have to wait to find out what happens after the fact, whether it's someone next to them explaining it or whether it's the radio. So that's frustrating. The second thing is you miss out on where the action is happening. You don't have that spatial orientation of where the ball is or where the players are. So then that next step was okay, if audio can't do that well, then can we create a touch-based solution that solves that problem? Can you convey spatial movement through touch? Not even talking about sports, just can you convey spatial details through touch? So we prototyped a bunch of these little devices that just had some motors on them, and people put their hands on the device, and we would just run tests like, oh, can you tell which side of the space the ball is on or something? We'd like activate certain motors or and the craziest story is there's a student at UW, his name's Vic, who was the first student to ever try our kind of initial prototypes. We had a 4x4 grid of motors that was connected to a webcam. So we'd move a ball around on this webcam, and accordingly, the motors would fire up on this little device. And Vic, within a few seconds of putting his hands on this little device, created a grid of motors in his mind, and he started calling them out as we moved the ball around. He said A1, A2, B2, B3, B4, like in a way that none of us were able to. So that was early validation that touch can communicate spatial information faster than audio can. So there's that initial kind of validation of okay, the idea, the initial like assumption behind the solution actually could work, right? So then so continuing to get feedback and creating like higher fidelity prototypes to see if you can meet the desired experience. And that's essentially what we've been doing for the past 2 years is iterating on a product that improves the experience based on feedback. Um, the final piece, I know I've been talking about this for a while, is validating that someone's going to pay for this product, right? That's the business modeling aspect of it. Is it going to be the blind community? Is it going to be sports teams? Is it going to be sports leagues? Is it going to be sponsors? What does the model look like? Um, are people willing to pay? And I think that's often the hardest thing when it comes to a startup idea is can you prove that someone will actually spend their money on it, whoever it is, whether it's the user or it's like a B2B application? Uh, and I think that's where we made way too many assumptions at the beginning of the project. We talked to some sports teams and they were like, oh, yeah, this is cool. And we took that as, yeah, they're going to pay for this, but it's only now where we're finally asking the right questions in customer discovery of like, who would make a decision on this? What are the requirements or qualifications to become a like technology vendor or supplier for a sports team or a stadium? Um, what type of model specifically makes sense? How much would they be willing to pay? Like asking the actual questions that help you understand whether or not someone would pay. And you need to get like letters of intent or secure pilot programs and things like that. Because ultimately that's proof, right? That's validation. Um, and I think a lot of people just forget about that step. Like, I'm going to build a solution. Maybe the solution's great. Maybe it solves a problem, but maybe no one's going to pay you for it.
Yeah. Now, do you find it difficult being such a strong social impact brand that companies or sports teams say that they want to commit and they write this letter of intent in order to make their image and make it like, make themselves be like, yeah, like I want to be able to help this cause, but then they don't, how do you balance like trying to get them to commit and them being kind of on like oh yeah, I'm interested. Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I think it really comes back to that question of what does it take to become a partner or to like to secure a deal? Like what is it going to take? What are the different qualifications? And if you don't ask that question, you'll probably never find out. You'll just be stuck in this conversation phase forever. And that's what we did for a whole year, right? We were shy. We were like nervous to ask the questions that we needed to ask. Um, I think a great example is recently there's a sports team that we were talking with, and we've been talking for a while, maybe like 8 months, 7 months at that point. And it was like after some feedback from mentors, I just reached out and I said, it feels like we're close. What do we need to secure this pilot? And then the contact said, yeah, you're right. Like, let's get this locked in. And then he sent over a systems check and he said, legal needs to sign off. Internal broadcast teams said okay. The league has said okay. Like marketing has said okay. Communications needs to like check one more thing, right? And finally, we had a checklist of all of the key internal stakeholders in an organization that need to sign off on a plan before something can move forward. It took us 8 months to get there because we hadn't been asking the right questions.
I also feel like you're dealing, and I'm just making assumptions here on like, I feel like you're dealing with big sports leagues and those move very slowly. So it may have been different if you were dealing with a smaller organization, but you already identified like, sports fans, big leagues that everybody watches. So I think it could have been a different outcome, but you're also dealing with like organizations that move very slow. So that's just a frustrating process in itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of like, bureaucracy and like you learn that teams, professional teams and leagues are very risk averse. Like their whole like value, like what they profit off of is their brand, right? Having a really strong brand image. And obviously first thought is something like this enhances that brand image. But if it's a prototype, what if it doesn't work well? What if people don't like it? What does that do to their brand? It's a huge risk for them then, right? It could totally backfire. So that's something we had to understand about like the customer like psyche is that they don't want to take risks. They want something proven and fully validated and risk free. They don't want to put their name on anything that isn't perfect. And that's hard from a scrappy startup point of view when you just want to put something out there for feedback, right? So that's one aspect of it.
So what do you think you guys have to do in order to gain that trust from these brands? What are like the steps it takes to build that trust? And if someone is trying to get in touch with the customer similar to yours, how would you recommend being able to build that relationship for them to be like, okay, I'm all in with you guys?
So there's a couple different aspects for us. I think the first is how do we get our foot in the door? I think the business idea itself helps with that. It's a good cause. Everyone by default wants to help. The second thing is being in school right now, I abuse the student card. My I just cold LinkedIn DM so many people at like director, VP, and C-suite levels at teams and leagues and other companies. And I say, hi, blank. I'm a student entrepreneur at the University of Washington working to make live sports accessible to blind and low vision fans. I'd love to share more and learn more about your work at blank. And I just send it. And they accept. So at this point, I've connected with VPs at the NFL using that method, VPs at like our data partner, um, like the president at the Golden State Warriors, like just people accept the request. They don't always reply, but I'm getting these people who have tons of these like LinkedIn requests and they're seeing something like, oh, student. working on a cool cause, wants to share more about their idea and learn more from me, I want to help. So that's step one. Step two is when you get the meeting, how do you establish your ethos? And a big part of that for us is our partnerships and our work with the community. So saying, here's a video of someone using our device. We start off pretty early with that. We then talk about we have these partners and these like funding resources. So you can be confident we have a proven and vetted team and like product. So we have a partnership with T-Mobile. That's how we're able to basically provide that real-time experience using their 5G network. So that's a great logo to have on your pitch deck. The other thing is that we're funded by the Microsoft AI for Accessibility grant. So you have the Microsoft logo on your deck. So you have a team of students working on the startup, which gets you in the door, but then maybe, is like, oh, I don't know if they can actually solve this problem. They're just students. So showing you have the expertise and the validation from the community saying, yeah, we have a testimonial from this nonprofit that works with the blind community saying our solution works, right? We have all of these videos of people loving the product. We have these big companies who are behind us and backing us on the technology side and the funding side. It's like, what more do you need? Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're proving scare money make no money. Like if you don't put yourself out there, you're not gonna get fed. Now, that's I think a hard thing for a lot of students, at least for me, putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations. Like the examples that you gave was, talking like being straight up and being like, how what are the next steps that we need to make? Stop dancing around the idea. And then the second thing is cold outreaching. And you were talking about you struggle to kind of be straightforward with, how can we take this to the next step? How did you allow yourself or put yourself in a way where you can be in those uncomfortable situations and get over that hump of, oh man, maybe I shouldn't just bring it up straight up. So like what would be your advice for people struggling to really just fall into those uncomfortable situations and start just shooting their shot?
look, I think if you're a student, you can kind of play off of the innocence sometimes, right? Of you can say, like, hey, like, we really want to make this happen. Can you walk me through from your perspective what the next steps might look like to implement technology like this? Like, I'm new to the industry and I'm trying to learn more. Is there a playbook or a process for startups wanting to work with professional teams and leagues? Like, I think you can play off of that innocence kind of aspect of it. The other side is find mentors and advisors who have done it, who have secured deals in the B2B like landscape or specifically in your industry, and then just ask them what to say, right? They're always willing to help. Sometimes mentors and advisors will sit in on a call with you, with a customer. And we haven't done it, but apparently it's pretty normal. Like people do it all the time. Um, and honestly, we should do it. But like I just
In the state of reflection right now.
like I just reached out to mentors recently and I was like, hey, here's the questions we've been asking. Can we get some feedback on this or schedule a time? And I wish I did that a year ago. You know, it's crazy like how bad our assumptions can be. Like we really as students sometimes don't know what we're doing. There's so many people who know what they're doing. If like if if you've learned a ton in 1 year of working on a project, imagine what someone with 20 years of compounding experience knows in an industry. It should be obvious, but sometimes you need to actually like fail and then realize that these people know way more than you do. So just asking them what to do and then doing it solves a lot of your problems.
And I wanna shift the conversation a little bit. We've been talking about students and helping them, but you're a student yourself and also trying to help build this company and doing your master's program and deciding to build OneCourt. How did that decision come about? Why did you do choose to pursue this avenue rather than working in a in a professional job in a professional industry? You could have taken two routes. How did you choose one door as opposed to the other?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that I was faced with that decision at the end of my senior year. I had a job offer for a PM role at a startup in Seattle, which is like, honestly everything I would really want out of like a job, right? And then I was faced with being admitted into the only grad program I applied to, which is the MS in Technology Innovation at UW. And obviously at the same time, I had been going through the Dempsey startup process and we had just won coming off of that high. And it was like, talking to my parents and mentors, the conversation was really around which opportunity is going to help you learn more and accelerate your career more. And yeah, I was tired of being in school, but it was like, where was I going to learn more? This one job or the opportunity of being in grad school where I can keep using the university's resources, learn from my classes, this really cool program, and also kind of work on a startup idea at the same time. Like it became clear that that grad school route, one, allowed me to keep working on the startup, which enables so much learning. And two, in case that didn't work, I'm still in school and I'm in a really cool program where I'm going to learn a ton and be working on a ton of projects that could all turn into different startup ideas if I wanted them to be. So I went with that option. Um, and I think that what I've found through that experience is like, yeah, it's really hard to do both at the same time, but there's no better place to build a startup than school, because it's actually, what risk are you taking on? The only risk is maybe you do a little worse in your classes. And if you're really committed to this idea you're working on, you don't get an internship. You work on this instead. Compared to people who wait and are like, oh, I'm going to do this sometime after I graduate. And, at that point, you're like trying to settle down, maybe like, or you're still moving around, like you're caught up in that career path, the rotational programs, or you get married and you start to have a kid. And it's like, so now you have massive risk.
Yeah.
If you have a mortgage stuff,
Yeah.
are you really gonna say, "I'm not gonna work at Microsoft anymore, I'm gonna work on this startup idea," and commit the 2 to 6 years it takes to actually build something?
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense, like, and I'm a little on the more extreme side where it's like, man, I believe people should just build projects while they're in school. Like school is like, it's cool and all in my opinion, and it's like great. I want to get a good education, but I feel like you learn so much more by building, and it's almost sexier on your resume when you decide to like go like, oh, maybe I need to go to corporate to make some money or stuff like that, because now they've seen you validate idea, get customers. You've done a lot more than just hit the books. And I feel like it tells a better story. But one thing that I was thinking about with this decision, I mean, at least if I were in your shoes, did you have any sort of doubts, or was there anything that it mentally made it a hard decision? Or was this like you knew you had to do this? And if you had any doubts, how did you overcome them? How did you overcome going against the grain or what's conventional? Seeing all your friends go to corporate jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think the biggest, like, the feeling of sacrifice comes from seeing other people enjoy and do things that you wish you were doing. It's seeing your friends buy a new car, right? With their signing bonus, or get an apartment in downtown, or like it's those things. And then even with like the idea of the day to day, right? It only feels like a sacrifice when you're surrounded by people who are doing fun things in the evenings and who are going out and having fun all the time. Because then you feel like, I'm not doing that. I'm at home and I'm working and whatever. But I would say living at home has been one of the best decisions I've made because at home, obviously the expectation is that I'm not going out on a even for like casual happy hours or whatever, I'm not doing that on a Monday through Thursday. The expectation is I'm at home. My parents are working late anyway. Of course, I'm also going to be working. Like, there's nothing else to do, right? So it's easier to be locked in and focused as opposed to when I lived, you know, on 21st. Like every night after classes are done or after 5 p.m., the boys are like, "Oh, so what are we doing tonight? Oh, we're gonna watch the game. We're gonna
Yeah.
go to Earl's. We're gonna go to Finn's. We're gonna go to Cap Hill, right? Ballard.
Yeah.
So throw the football around. Let's do IMA
Yeah.
softball.
Just blowing
Like,
down, yeah, just blowing down. That can be a huge distraction, yeah. So I selfishly like how we're all in Seattle right now and the weather is so crap. That it forces you to stay inside and just like continue grinding. And I like that excuse that we have living in Seattle. But yeah, I'm under the assumption myself that building something right now while we have less responsibilities. Um, we're working hard so we can hopefully play harder later. But I totally agree with you on Tush. Like we have less responsibilities right now, so now is the time to take those risks and just go out there and like try something. Um, I'm super stoked that you're on that path right now because that's what me and Ahk are trying to do as well.
yeah. And I think there's this idea of like, yeah, you take on more risk when you're younger, but I think a lot of the startup process, like you need to remember is about eliminating risk. That's how investors are thinking too, right? How do you eliminate risk from an investment? Every startup founder is making an investment. It may not be money, but it's their time, it's the opportunity cost. So what we were talking about earlier with like validating that your problem actually exists, validating that your solution actually works, validating that someone actually pays for it, you can do those things while not working on your idea full time, right? You can do that bare minimum work of going that, you know, idea to proof of concept while you're in classes or after work or on the weekends. You don't need to take that huge leap and quit everything until you do that.
Yeah. Well, now this kind of can segue into a question that I wanted to ask you. How do you think about obsession? Obsession is a big thing that a lot of people talk about in the startup world. And what does it mean to you? And how do you define obsession when it comes to OneCourt or just any sort of startup ideas and the startup world in general?
It's a good question. Yeah, like I would say I'm obsessed with, you know, one court, but it's like it's the positive feedback cycles, I think, of when I see myself working really hard. I am so fortunate that that has ended in really cool opportunities, whether that means getting to go to the Forbes conference or getting to travel to Kansas City and test our device at a Chiefs game against the Bengals, right? Or getting to go to Vegas for a week and demo our product and meet Stevie Wonder who tried our device. Like,
That's lit.
No way! Wow, that's
That's
so
lit.
cool.
Wait,
What
wait, 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 hold on, hold on.
the?
What? How is that like? What was that like interacting with Stevie Wonder?
so I actually clarify, I wasn't there. I was at a networking event, but he came to our booth. You know,
Oh, that thing.
we got a video of him using it though. So
That's
That's
sick. That's
awesome.
sick.
it's like anyway, it's that the hours, like the toiling, the things like that turn into really cool opportunities. So for me, when I'm working all the time, it's like I'm working towards something, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's like obsessed is like a strange word because it's like I feel like sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that there's like an end result, like you're just like doing something over and over again. Um, at least to me. But I see I see it being like there's constant movement, right? And I have to keep working really hard. Like the more successful we are, the more work I have to put in to get things to go up.
Yeah, and I like I don't know. I don't know. I love this concept of obsession because it means different to everyone. But like the most addictive thing for me is like that flow state. Like when you achieve that flow state where like time just you just you lose track of time. You fall in love with the process. And I feel like that's like when you really think and just like allow yourself to be curious and go into your curiosities. That's when you like really fall into a deep level of obsession. And it's like, and it's just such a euphoric feeling. I talk about this with Murph all the time, just achieving that level of euphoria when like love that level of obsession. That's I can explain enough how amazing that is. But there's one thing that I think that isn't talked about in the startup world very much. And I think that's creativity. And how do you think about creativity when it comes to OneCourt? Because a lot of people, when they think creativity, think of Van Gogh, Basquiat, they think of all these artists. But I feel like if you don't got an imagination in the startup world, you can't come up with amazing solutions. And so, how do you think about creativity when it comes to approaching your product at OneCourt?
Yeah, I'll say Jared is definitely a chief creative at OneCourt. Like has too many ideas most of the time. And it's really nice to have someone who's constantly coming up with ideas, right? And I think a lot of that creativity obviously comes from a process. I think a lot of people think that creativity is like inspiration, but it's you have to sit and you have to practice being creative. Like you have to go through that process of being in a collaborative environment, like surrounding yourself with other people who are trying to come up with ideas. It's about having like like being able to have like a wilder imagination and saying like yes and doing brainstorming sessions and not shooting ideas down, right? Because ideas like spider out. It's about like again, the process for me is I find myself needing to be on a whiteboard. I am not as creative when I'm just sitting around, but if I'm on a whiteboard, I'm pretty creative. The other place where I'm really creative is the shower. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
shower
When I'm j-
thoughts, shower
That's
thoughts.
me
Yeah.
too. Me too. Me too.
uh,
Shower because like is a perfect reset like for your day. You know when you're in that like that midday slump and take a quick shower, your thoughts go crazy.
well, I think so much of creativity is like you can't be actively thinking about things. Like there's passive and there's active thinking, right? Like there's so many cases of like you'll have a big problem that you're trying to solve and you sit there for hours and you try to solve it and you don't make any movement. And you go off and you do some other random fun activity where you're not actively thinking about it and then it comes to you, right? Because your brain is like passively working on it. So when you're showering or you're meditating, or sometimes it's when I'm in bed and I'm like about to sleep, like something will hit me and I have to open my eyes, grab my phone, open up my notes app and just put it in. Or I'll wake up in the middle of the night with the idea. So yeah, I think you have to remember there's two elements to it. As I said, like there's your team, there's that process of sitting down, coming up with ideas, taking inspiration from the people you're getting feedback from, learning as much as you can about your industry, and then also making sure that you're just taking breaks and like relaxing, because that's where I think so much of the ideas will actually come from.
How do you like to take breaks, like to just prevent burnout, I guess? What do you like to do?
Um, so I think that being out and about helps. Like I like the whole hybrid kind of work setup. Like on Mondays, I pretty much work from home, but I obviously have classes during the week too. So I'll end up driving, going to classes, and I'll drive to work, things like that. Um, and then on the weekends, I try to make a point of like going out and like seeing my friends, um, which I hadn't actually done in a few weeks. And I think I was especially exhausted. I almost didn't go last night. I made myself. And I'm glad I did because seeing people who make you happy is refreshing, even if it's like physically tiring sometimes, right? You need that mental, like, kind of, you're at ease with those people, right? Like the boys. So,
Yeah. It's just healthy too, I feel like, to like, stay grounded and go back to like this comfort area just to reset, and then dive right back into where you started, last week. So um,
yeah, I think taking breaks on the weekends and stuff. I mean, I work on the weekends, but like not the same number of hours as during the week. So during the week, it's like with classes and one court, it's like a 8 to 11:30 kind of grind. But then on Saturdays, it'll be like 4 hours. And then Sunday, it would be 8, but it's like the end of the day. It'll be like from 2 to 3 p.m. until I like go to bed. And I'll just be like at my desk working on things. Um, but that feels like relaxing, because I took the morning, I enjoyed it. I maybe went and got lunch with my family or something. Um, so I think it's just by making sure that you see the people who you care about and who make you feel happy, like spending time with them, for me is like the most relaxing thing I can do.
definitely, I agree with that. And while we're on this creative talk, are you still into photography? Does that help you inspire you to pursue a different avenue, give you a different perspective when you're working on one core, or just anything in general?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't gotten to take photos as much as I'd like. Um, that has been really tough. I think that I need to like get back out there. Um, I think a combination of like the weather. I actually had like a car accident in October, so my car got totaled. I'm totally
Mhm.
fine, but it's like,
Okay.
I'm not like, since I'm driving a different car, different family car, like it's not like I have the same free reign to go wherever I want, whenever I want in a different car. My parents have to get used to that, right? Like the other car was like my car. I could go wherever, do whatever. Um, so I think there's a few different elements. I haven't gotten to engage in photography the way I like to. Um, but yeah, I think that it's definitely something I want to be doing more of, and I'm excited. I have a couple of like trips planned. I'm going to Scottsdale in April, and I'm going to go try and take some photos in the desert then. I've also actually been doing this thing where um, I'm taking one photo a day on film for the year. So you're right. I am.
Ooh.
Um,
Okay,
but it's
okay.
like different. It's not like I'm going out to some waterfall and like spending hours there flying my drone around and doing that. It's like a different kind of like, I'm just trying to capture my life through photos in a different way this year.
I love that. Me and my friends, we do this thing every time we go on a trip. We'll always get like what those the cheap little film cameras from like Rite Aid or whatever drugstore, and we won't look at it until the end of the year. We'll just buy a ton of them for every trip, and then we won't look at it till the end of the year. And it's just so fun to look at all the progress and all this, all of these memories that you made, and just looking back at it, it's just such a like an amazing moment. I think that's cool that you're doing it just for your day to day life, and thinking about it like you're gonna see your personal growth throughout as you're growing one core, as you're growing yourself. Like that's a concept that I might have to start taking notes and doing that myself. That's lit.
So let's take the photo of the day right now.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Hey, hey, hey! I did
I
not
love that.
expect it. Hey.
Got it.
Let's go. I love
That's
that. I
lit.
love
That's
that.
lit.
Okay, let's hop to our final segment that we're gonna try out, and we're excited to try out with you.
All right, Antyush, it's time for hot seat. So we're gonna give you some quick topics, and you got 5 to 10 seconds for each. I think we'll give you about 3 minutes, and then I think Murph, you start heading down through it. I'll put a 3 minute timer, and Antyush, you gotta give us the best response that you can in 5 to 10 seconds. I'm
All
gonna be
right.
pissed if it's not a good response. I'm just
Okay.
playing.
Okay.
All right, let me start it right now.
Timer.
Yeah, yeah. Give me a sec. Give me a second. I always struggle to find the clock app on my phone.
I'm like nervous, man.
No, it's totally no.
Hey,
You're gonna have fun with it.
This takes you back. This takes you back.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right, ready? Go.
Okay. Antyush, what's one app you can't live without?
My calendar app,
Okay. What's one physical product you can't live without?
my water bottle.
All right. If you could have dinner with any entrepreneur, who would it be?
Mm, I'll go Elon Musk. I feel like that's a basic response, but
No,
he
that's
seems like a
okay.
fun character.
Yeah, yeah. He just seems like a character. All
I'd
right.
be an interesting dinner.
Yeah, definitely. Um, what's the weirdest thing you've done in the name of research?
What? In the name of research?
Yeah.
What you have to get done to make sure that you got whatever customer information you
Yeah, yeah,
need.
yeah. That's where I was kind of going with that question.
Okay. Um,
You had to get scrappy one of these days. I know you had to pursue
well,
somebody.
it's it's funny.
He's just struggling to just. He's like, I don't know if I should mention this.
What is it?
All right. We'll keep moving. We'll keep moving.
We'll keep moving. We'll
Uh,
keep moving.
do you like to drink coffee or tea while you're working?
Oh, um, I would say I'm more of a tea person.
Okay, I like that. Green tea?
I so if I prefer like chai,
Okay, yeah.
like
Chai's fire.
milk chai, like a latte, but
With it.
I've recently been doing like the tea bags.
Okay.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's solid. Easy. Which book has significantly influenced your entrepreneurial journey? Any Rex?
Um, I read I think it was like I'm actually forgetting the name, but it's all about that lean business canvas. It's like
Lean
I think it's
Startup?
fail
Lean
fast,
startup.
lean startup.
That's a good one. Yeah, I've been listening to that audiobook
Eric
actually right
Rise,
now.
right? Lean
Yeah.
startup. Eric Rise.
So it's so
Yeah, that's a
interesting
fire
'cause
book.
he's the guy who runs the Lavin program at SDSU.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
no way. I
Yeah,
didn't
I don't
know
I
know
did
if
that.
you
not
guys
know
know,
Okay.
that.
there's 2 Lavin programs.
I know. I
So,
always see that. I always see that.
yeah,
Yeah, there's one at SCSU too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's a great book. What's one piece of technology you're excited about for the future?
Mm.
And you can't say OneCourt.
I wanna say haptics or AI. Uh, I'll say, like, there's one thing I'm really into, it's called precision healthcare. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's like it's basically like, this idea of using your healthcare data, your lifestyle data, and your, like, genetic data to provide healthcare that is personalized and predictive and preventative. So, right now, all of healthcare is, like, reactive, right? Like, you go to the doctor, they look at your records, and they're like, "Oh, you like, what have you been experiencing? Blah, blah," and they give you a solution. But what if with IoT, all these sensors and everything, 5G, like your wearables, your genetic data, doctors could monitor your health and an app or whatever it is, these systems could tell you beforehand of how your body is
Yeah.
gonna perform in a future
Another
state.
level of biohacking. Is that kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Like, have you heard of the biohacking community?
Not is that like putting implants in and stuff?
No, no, no. It's like the have you ever like Huberman where he talks about like, just getting sunlight, doing
Yeah.
like getting
Yeah.
getting your feet touching grass just because like it adds like it's just like hacking your body in order to stay young. It's like
Yeah.
almost like it's like a whole community for it.
Yeah, and if like there was like some personalized like healthcare product, like maybe like maybe it's Apple Health that does it eventually, where they have
Yeah,
all of the
I could
data
totally
and they
see
can be
that. Yeah.
like, you should go step outside right now. Your body's performing like this, and you like instantly feel better. Right.
Okay, yeah, I'll let Apple take my data for that cause. Are you an early bird or a night owl for productivity?
Night owl.
Okay, all right. What's your go-to relaxation activity?
Um, laying on the floor. I
Just
have a
fully
beanbag right
sprawling
next to
out.
me. I just lay
Nice,
on the
nice.
floor, turn on cool lights, and I just lay there.
Yeah. Um, So if not in startups with OneCore, what alternate career do you think you'd be pursuing right
Um, as I mentioned earlier, I think it'd be product management, but I think I learned recently I really love the whole like the PM is not the only job to work at the intersection of business and tech. Like there's as I've realized through like the counterparts I have at like these different, leagues or like partners, there are like head of data partnerships or head of like data licensing or whatever it is at these different organizations that I would love a role like that because they work with startups, they work with tech, and they're like the strategy guy. So I would love something like that.
Take notes, y'all. Take notes. This is the last one. This is the last one. Name a startup myth you think is overrated.
A startup myth.
Yeah.
Um, I think everyone's obsessed with building like unicorns. Like
Word. We just were
building
talking
all
about that.
Yeah, we just were talking.
because OneCourt really like right now we're not that like I think there's an opportunity there, but we're not like the $30 billion potential company, right? It's like our TAM is like scratching at like that 2 billion mark. So, but with our current use case and everything, it's like in stadium, in arena, having our devices at every team in the US, the big ones like the 150 teams, market size is like 5 million, right? So it's a lot smaller, but still could be a successful company. So
Well, that's the wrap of hot seat. I low key rigged it. I was trying to hear all your responses, so I paused the timer every time.
Well, Antyush, we're wrapping it up here, but thanks for absolutely, just lighting up this episode with some insights, and you took your idea and turned it into a reality, and that's just what we're trying to inspire people here to do at all caps. So thanks for being on, and it was awesome talking to you and learning more about OneCourt. Anything you want to say to our listeners before we wrap this up?
Yeah, socials. How can they go follow your journey after this?
yeah, that's a thanks for reminding me about that. Follow our LinkedIn. That's where we're most active posting our content, but we also have an Instagram, onecourt.io. It's the same link as our website. We're actually going to be dropping some merch pretty soon.
Oh yeah,
It's
Hey,
Sports Are for Everyone t-shirts, tote bags, stickers.
oh, I
Uh,
like
that's
that. I
fire.
like that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it has some like cool sketches of our like product and things like that, like design sketches. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
lit.
if you guys are interested in supporting the journey and what we stand for, I'll be sure to share out those links in the future. But for now,
We'll drop it once you got that out there. We'll drop the link under. Everyone go purchase it. Go show some love. And stay tuned for more stories like Antyush on all caps. Appreciate y'all. Have a good day.
Later.